want to tell you about a man I met in my clinic a few years back. His name was Robert. He was 64 years old, recently divorced, and sitting across from me with this look on his face. The kind of look that says a man has already decided something about himself before anyone else gets a chance to. He told me, "Dr. Harper, I think my time has passed. Women don't look at men like me anymore." And I remember putting down my pen and saying, "Robert, I'm going to stop you right there because you are so wrong it's almost funny." Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Dr. Lily Harper, and if this is your first time here, I've spent over 15 years working in health and wellness, sitting across from thousands of patients, men and women, young and old, and having conversations that most people never get to have with their doctors. Real conversations, honest ones. And today, I want to have one of those conversations with you. Because here's what I've noticed over the years, especially working with men over 60. So many of you have quietly accepted a story that simply isn't true. The story that says your attractiveness has an expiration date, that once you hit a certain age, you're invisible to women, that whatever you had in your 30s and 40s is gone, and there's nothing you can do about it now. I'm here today to dismantle that story completely. What I'm about to share with you isn't dating advice from a magazine. This is grounded in real science, behavioral research, and 15 years of watching people transform their lives by understanding something most men never figure out until it's too late. Women, and I mean women of all ages, including women in their 50s, 60s, and beyond, are instinctively drawn to specific physical qualities in men. And here's the kicker. Most of these qualities have almost nothing to do with your face, your height, or your bank account. And almost all of them can be improved, maintained, and even enhanced, no matter how old you are. So stay with me here, because by the end of this, you're going to see yourself differently. I promise you that. Let's start with something that might genuinely surprise you. Of all the physical features that women notice first when they encounter a man, research consistently points to one thing that gets overlooked in every men's magazine and every dating conversation I've ever heard. It's your hands. I know. Stay with me. Think about it for a second. No matter how well dressed you are, no matter what jacket you're wearing or how neatly your hair is combed, your hands are almost always visible. They're the most exposed part of your body in nearly every social situation. You hand someone a cup of coffee, you reach across a table, you gesture while you talk, and all the while a woman's brain, often completely unconsciously, is gathering information. Research out of Cornell University found that women tend to form impressions of a man's trustworthiness and reliability based significantly on his hands, not his eyes, not his jawline, his hands. And I've seen this play out in ways that would genuinely shock you. Now here's where I want to pause and say something directly to some of you, because I know exactly what a few of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, "Dr. Harper, I was born with small hands. There's nothing I can do about that." And I hear you, I really do. But I need you to understand something critical. Hand size is one of the least important factors here. What women are actually responding to is not the raw dimensions of your hand. It's the condition, the care, and the energy your hands communicate. Here's what women actually respond to when they look at a man's hands. First, it's the overall shape and vitality. Some women are drawn to larger, more muscular hands with visible veins, that impression of physical strength and capability. Others are drawn to longer, more slender fingers that suggest precision and sensitivity. Both can be deeply attractive, but what nearly every woman responds to negatively, regardless of hand size or shape, is hands that look neglected. Cracked skin, ragged, uneven nails, general roughness that suggests the man doesn't pay attention to himself. A study from Oxford University looked at a specific detail, the ratio between the index finger and the ring finger. Men whose ring finger is noticeably longer than their index finger were found to have been exposed to higher levels of testosterone in the womb, and those men tended to display more drive and assertiveness in their behavior. Interesting data point, but again, you cannot change that ratio. What you absolutely can change is everything else. Trim your nails, keep them clean, use a basic hand lotion. There's absolutely nothing unmasculine about that. And if anyone ever told you there was, they were wrong. A well-maintained hand on a 65-year-old man is infinitely more attractive than a neglected hand on a 35-year-old. I have watched women across the room visibly respond to a man simply because of how he gestured with his hands while talking. There's a quiet confidence that comes from a man who takes care of himself down to the details. That detail matters more than you know. Now let's talk about something else that most men have never once considered as part of their attractiveness, and that's your voice and the way it carries. There's fascinating research from the University of Sheffield that found when women hear a lower, steadier male voice, it actually activates the brain's pleasure response. Not metaphorically, literally, neurologically. The brain responds to a deep, calm voice the way it responds to other things it finds rewarding, and the evolutionary explanation makes sense. A lower voice has historically been associated with higher testosterone levels, with physical health, with a sense of security and protection. Even in modern life, that ancient wiring is still running in the background. Now let me be real with you. Some guys are naturally blessed with a deep, resonant voice. Others aren't. And if you're sitting there thinking your voice sounds nothing like that, don't count yourself out yet, because here's what the research also shows. It's not just the pitch, it's the pace, the steadiness, and the control. A man who speaks slowly and clearly, who doesn't rush his words, who doesn't fill every pause with nervous filler sounds. That man communicates something deeply compelling, regardless of whether his voice is bass or baritone. Women consistently report feeling more trust and more calm around men who speak at a deliberate, unhurried pace. It signals inner confidence. It signals that this is a man who isn't rattled, who doesn't need to fill silence with noise just to feel okay. Here are a few practical things you can actually do. Practice what's called diaphragmatic breathing. Breathing from your belly rather than your chest. This naturally deepens and stabilizes your voice and gives it more resonance. Drink a glass of water before any situation where you'll be talking. Morning dehydration makes voices thin and reedy. Try humming quietly for 5 minutes a day at a comfortable low note. It sounds ridiculous, but singers and voice coaches have used this for decades because it genuinely works to deepen and enrich the vocal tone over time. And I cannot stress this enough. Slow down. The men I've watched who are most compelling in conversation aren't the ones with the deepest voices. They're the ones who speak like they have all the time in the world. That unhurried quality is magnetic at any age. If anything, it becomes more attractive as you get older because it reads as wisdom and ease. All right, I'm going to talk about something now that almost always gets a surprised reaction. So get ready. The third physical feature that women instinctively notice and respond to in men is the glutes. That's right, your backside. I know. I hear the reaction every time I bring this up. But hear me out, because this is genuinely well supported. Women, particularly women in midlife and beyond, are very aware of a man's posterior, often more aware than they'll ever admit in polite conversation. The reason is partly aesthetic and partly something deeper. A firm, toned backside improves the entire silhouette of a man's body. It changes how clothes hang on him. It changes his posture. It changes the way he walks. From a purely visual standpoint, it's one of the most influential physical features in terms of overall impression. And it's one that most men essentially ignore entirely after their 20s. Research has shown that women evaluate the ratio between a man's shoulders, waist, and hips as a composite whole. A man with a firm, proportionate backside carries himself differently. That firmness signals physical vitality and body awareness in a way that's hard to fake and hard to ignore. Here's the thing about this particular feature that makes it especially relevant for men over 60. The glutes are one of the first muscle groups to lose tone as we age. The muscle fibers shrink, the connective tissue loosens, and men who were fit in their 40s often find that their 60s bring a noticeable change in that area, regardless of their overall weight or health. But here's the good news, and it's really good news. The glutes also respond very well to training, even in later life. Squats are your best friend here. Stand with your feet about shoulder width apart, back straight, and slowly lower yourself as if you're sitting down into a chair. Pushing your hips back, keeping your knees behind your toes. 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps. That's it. That's a starting point that takes less than 10 minutes. Add lunges if you want to push further. But even beyond dedicated exercise, simply making a habit of engaging your glutes when you walk, Consciously activating those muscles with each step makes a cumulative difference over weeks and months. A man in his late 60s who has clearly maintained his lower body looks dramatically more vital than a younger man who hasn't. I've seen this. It is not subtle. The fourth physical feature is one that you've probably heard about before, but maybe not in the way I'm about to frame it. And that's shoulder width and posture. Wide, squared shoulders on a man trigger an almost universally positive response in women. The research is clear and consistent on this point. A ratio of roughly 1.6 to 1 between shoulder width and waist, sometimes called the V-taper, is rated as most attractive across multiple cultures and age groups. Women describe men with broader shoulders as looking protective, capable, secure. Those aren't conscious intellectual conclusions. They're instinctive reads that happen in seconds. Now, some men are built with naturally broad shoulders, others aren't. But before you decide this point doesn't apply to you, I want to tell you about the single most powerful thing you can do for your shoulder appearance that requires zero exercise and zero equipment. It's your posture. I have seen men who had objectively narrow shoulders look absolutely commanding simply because they stood and moved correctly. Back straight, shoulder blades gently pulled together and down, chest open, chin level. That's it. That alignment alone creates a shoulder line that looks broader, more defined, and more confident. Conversely, I have seen genuinely broad-shouldered men look slouched and diminished because of chronic forward head posture and rounded shoulders. Posture is everything. For the men who want to build shoulder width through exercise, overhead pressing movements and lateral raises are effective and joint-friendly when done correctly. A few sessions a week, nothing extreme. And for the men who just want a visual boost, the cut of a jacket matters enormously. A structured blazer with minimal padding along the shoulder seam, not exaggerated, just structured, can visually enhance your shoulder line in a way that's completely natural and genuinely effective. A lot of male actors and public figures use this intentionally. There's no reason you shouldn't. One more thing on this point. After 60, shoulder muscle mass naturally decreases unless it's actively maintained. Men who are deliberate about their upper body through their 60s tend to carry themselves with a physical presence that reads as decades younger. It's one of the most visible and immediate ways that taking care of yourself pays off in terms of overall impression. And finally, the fifth physical feature that women find instinctively compelling, and this one consistently gets the most dramatic reaction when I bring it up in clinical settings. It's your thighs. I know, take a breath. But listen, the research on this is actually pretty fascinating, and the implications for your health go well beyond attractiveness. Women, especially women in their 40s, 50s, and beyond, consistently rate well-developed thighs as one of the most attractive physical features in men. Not the feature they talk about publicly at dinner, but the feature they genuinely notice and respond to, often more than almost anything else. Here's why. From both an evolutionary and a practical standpoint, the thighs contain the largest muscle mass in the human body. When those muscles are developed and maintained, they signal something powerful. This man is active, capable, and physically resilient. He can move through the world with strength and stability. There's a reason some fitness researchers describe the thigh muscles as the second heart. They play a major role in circulating blood through the lower body, and their development is directly linked to cardiovascular health, insulin sensitivity, and hormonal balance. Medical research published in recent years has specifically found that men with greater thigh circumference have meaningfully lower rates of heart disease and type 2 diabetes. Women may not consciously know that statistic, but their instincts seem to register the underlying reality it points to. A man with firm, developed thighs walks differently. He plants his feet with more certainty. He moves with a kind of physical confidence that is nearly impossible to fake and genuinely difficult to ignore. The good news, and there's a lot of good news in this particular section, is that the thighs are one of the most trainable muscle groups in the body, and they respond to relatively simple, low-impact work. If you're not ready to hit the gym, walking briskly for 20 minutes 3 times a week is genuinely enough to begin making a difference. Taking stairs instead of elevators. Getting up from a chair without using your hands to push yourself up. That alone, practiced repeatedly, is essentially a bodyweight squat that works your thighs every time. If you do want to push further, squats and lunges are the gold standard, and the results for men over 60 can be significant and relatively quick. Within a few months of consistent lower body training, the change in how you carry yourself, the shift in your gait, in your posture, in the confidence of your movement, is visible to anyone paying attention. Now let me bring all 5 of these together because I want to make sure you walk away from this with the right picture. Your hands, communicating care, self-awareness, and reliability. Your voice, projecting calm, authority, and inner steadiness. Your glutes, signaling physical vitality and body awareness. Your shoulders, radiating protective strength and confident presence. Your thighs, embodying health, resilience, and grounded physical power. What do all of these have in common? Here's what I find genuinely remarkable, and what I always come back to when I think about what makes a man compelling at any age. Every single one of these features is fundamentally a health signal. Women aren't drawn to these things because of arbitrary aesthetic preferences. They're drawn to them because, on a very deep biological level, these features communicate that this man is alive, thriving, and capable. And none of them, not a single one, requires you to have been born with a particular face or a particular height or a particular genetic blueprint. I want to go back to Robert for a moment, because I did see him again about 8 months after that first conversation. He'd taken a few things seriously. He'd started walking every morning, doing basic bodyweight exercises 3 times a week. He was more deliberate about how he dressed, a structured jacket, well-fitted pants. He'd started paying attention to his hands, something he'd never once thought about in 64 years. And he'd worked on slowing down when he spoke, on letting silence be comfortable instead of something to fill. He wasn't a different person. He hadn't become 40 again. But something had shifted in how he moved through a room, in how he held himself, in the quiet confidence that comes from a man who has decided to take himself seriously. And he told me, with this kind of quiet wonder in his voice, that people were responding to him differently. Women were making eye contact, conversations were easier. He felt present in the world again in a way he'd stopped expecting. That's what I want for you, not some fantasy of turning back the clock, but the real grounded confidence that comes from knowing you've put in the work, that you're showing up as the best version of who you are right now, at this age, with this body, with all the experience and depth that 60 or more years of living gives a person. Because here's the truth that I wish more men could hear. There is an attractiveness that deepens with age. It's not the kind that shouts. It's the kind that centers a room. It's the kind that comes from a man who is comfortable in his own skin, who carries himself with quiet dignity, who takes care of himself not out of vanity but out of self-respect. That quality, that particular quality, is something a 30-year-old man often hasn't earned yet. You have. You just have to choose to carry it. So take one thing from today. Just one. Maybe it's the hands. Start there. Get a basic nail clipper and some hand lotion. Spend 3 minutes tonight. Maybe it's the posture. Stand in front of a mirror, pull those shoulder blades back, lift your chest, and notice the difference. Maybe it's the walking. Commit to 20 minutes tomorrow morning, and the morning after that, and the morning after that. Small, consistent actions compound over time in ways that will genuinely surprise you. The man you can be at 65 or 70, if you make the decision to invest in yourself, is not a lesser version of who you were. He can be, in many ways, the most compelling version you've ever been. I'm Dr. Lily Harper, and I'll see you in the next one.